for joining us for this second session on restoration techniques with a few also pilot sites that are going to present their work on this important topic. Thank you for all of you that can join us again. And I also want to say that the president and both the director of MedPan again couldn't join us today, but they're looking forward to meet you next time. And I think we should jump in because there's lots of topic to cover today, lots of very full presentation. So we can move to the next slide. And this is the reminder slide about, please, can you type your name and organization next to your name so we can recognize and know who is who. Use the interpretation available. Please turn off your mic, microphone. Don't hesitate to ask a question, either in the chat box or by raising your hand. And when we give the floor, if you can, it's not mandatory, but it's nice to see your face if you have a camera that is working. Also, please note that the session will be recorded today. So yeah, and Patricia, this is a consultant supporting the organization of the training. I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Susan, and thank you everyone for being here again. So just a quick reminder of our training structure. Today we are in the second virtual session, and we will focus on restoration techniques and case studies. And the next sessions are monitoring and evaluation and action planning and funding. That will be next week and next week. Now we have following weeks. So this is before we meet in person in the Cabo de Gata for the 4 days training. And the idea is to move from the concepts into practice these days, these virtual days, building a shared understanding of restoration approaches, and then before we go to the field. So next slide, please. I will give overlook on the agenda for today. So for today, we will begin with Patrick Astrup from GIS Posidonia. And he will give us an overview on the core restoration techniques applied across Mediterranean habitats with a focus on Posidonia. After his presentation, we will have a short Q&A, and then we will follow we have today 2 case studies. So one is from Cap Dacte, from Sylvain Bluet, who is there, and this is presented by him. And then the other one is from the Rest Coast pilot site in Sicily, presented by Massimiliano Marino. Afterwards, we will have the participants' presentations, and we have, at the moment, we have 3. We will hear examples from Albania, Tunisia, and Spain. So, and then we will close the session with discussion and takeaways. So then let's start with this session. Then please, next slide. I would like to invite, before we go through the speakers, just to share also the learning objectives for today. And we will distinguish this for the active, passive, and behavior restoration methods, which we already mentioned in the last day, in the first day. But then we will look at habitat-specific techniques, particularly Posidonia, Cystoseria, coralligenous reefs, and artificial reefs. And then through the case studies, we will learn what has worked, the challenges that remain, and what lessons can be transferred for your case, for your MPA. Finally, we will have the chance to reflect on your MPA context, and then about which restoration approaches could apply and how they can be a strength. So then now, yes, I'm inviting the speaker, the first speaker of today. So we have Patrick Astrup, as I mentioned, researcher engineer at GIS Posidonia and Aix-Marseille University. So Patrick will give us an overview of the core restoration techniques used in the Mediterranean, distinguish between the active, passive, and hybrid, and then with examples from Posidonia, coralligenous, macroalgae, and artificial reefs. He will also share the lessons learned and long-term field experience. when and how each technique was most effective. So Patrick, are you there? We have the
Yes.
presentation there, so no worries about that. You just had to do next to pass the slide. So the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Maybe it would be easier if I can share my screen with the presentation.
The presentation is there. It's on the main slide. So if that's convenient for you, we go to the next, and you will see we already put it there. So if that's okay for you.
Okay, we try. Maybe try not to lose too much time. Okay, so thank you for inviting me for doing this presentation today and talk about restoration, ecological restoration of Posidonia oceanica meadow. So next slide, please. So I'm Patrick Astruc from GIS Posidonia. GIS Posidonia is a group of scientific interest in the Mediterranean for Mediterranean marine environment and particularly on Posidonia meadows. It's a non-profit organization since 1982, and we are mostly doing applied research in marine and lagoon ecology. And we try to establish this link between the academic scientific field and environment management. And we have strong partnership with Aix-Marseille University, where we are located, and with other institutions across the Mediterranean. Next slide. As a Mediterranean manager, I think you already know this species, Posidonia oceanica. Next slide, which is endemic to the Mediterranean, which means that it's only in the Mediterranean Sea. It's between 0 to 40-meter depths, according to the water transparency. It can be deeper in some area, like in Cyprus, for example. Yes, next slide. And it's hosting, the next one, okay. It's hosting 20 to 25% of Mediterranean marine species. So it's like a hotspot of biodiversity. And as a consequence, on the next slide, please, it can be considered as an ecological crossroad with numerous ecological functions and related ecosystem services. And just to resume, like nursery, breeding, shelter, for species of economic interest. It's as well natural coastal protection. It's a primary producer. And one of the originality, you can click one time, please. Can go to the next slide, please. The originality is there was just a picture, is the edification of this perennial mat, which consists on rhizomes and roots with sediments. And this mat corresponds to one of the most effective carbon sink worldwide. So this is the next slide. It's next slide, please. Yes. So it's surpassing the by far all the ecosystem like mangroves or peatlands or salt marshes with the capacity of a long-term sequestration of carbon. You can go to the next one. Yes, again. But meantime, Posidonia as a marine marine magnolophyte is among the slowest growth in the world, with only 1 to 3 6 centimeters per year of horizontal growth, which is very, very few. So the next one. And of course, Posidonia meadow are facing huge anthropogenic pressures, mostly since the 20th century, with an estimated surface area loss of 34% during the 50 last years at Mediterranean scale, due to coastal development, wastewater discharge, trawling, dredging, etc. And more recently, so next slide, please. We are facing new challenges like the climate change and with a questioning about the impact of marine heat waves leading to shoot mortality or at least bleaching events. There is also the questioning consequences of mass flowering events. Is it a stress response negative for the meadow, or is this Is it an actual opportunity for genetic diversification? The next one. And another challenge, quite recent, is an exponential increasing of anchoring activities since the 2010s in various regions of the Mediterranean, conducing to the regressing of huge surface area of meadow, like in this example in French Riviera or in Corsica. Next one, just some pictures to illustrate what can be found on the water, some scars on the meadow with a lot of dead material, and this light green we can see here correspond to the opportunistic spreading of the invasive Caulerpa taxifolia. So here we are in close to the Gulf of Saint-Tropez in Pamplona. The next one. So next slide, please. Okay, so now maybe one slide is missing. The previous one was skipped. Yes. So for all this reason, there is a particular protection status of Posidonia meadow at national or international level, like in France or like in Catalonia or Balearic Islands. There are European directives that are considering Posidonia meadows as a priority habitat. So the Barcelona Convention consider with a high level of conservation the Posidonia meadow. And there are other strategies like biodiversity strategies and nature restoration regulation, which is a European regulation, quite recent. And also the previous COP from 21 to 26, since the Paris Agreement in 2015, they aim at supporting natural carbon sinks, including vegetation, so including the Posidonia meadows and seagrasses worldwide. So now the next slide is how to restore Posidonia. So we talk basically on two aspects with the passive restoration and active restoration. Passive, which means removing the pressure, the stressors, and active, corresponding to giving a hand to the process of natural recovering by assisting, by transplanting mostly. Can move to the next slide, please. The passive restoration can correspond to just removing the impacting stressor that were causing the decreasing of the meadow. It can be conservation, like MPAs with strong regulations and effective regulation. And what is needed in such process is to adopt the appropriate regulation at local, national, and regional level. On this slide, we can see a map. It's the French Mediterranean coast, and this is the implementation of a national decree prohibiting the anchoring of a boat over 24-meter depths. And associated to this kind of regulation, what is needed is a suitable ecological mooring devices everywhere, or some other tool that can help the user to act in a suitable way, like this Donia application, mobile application in France, that allow the user to find the spot where he can anchor without damaging the meadow. So that's some tools that are to be used synchronized. The next slide, please. One more, okay. One example at quite large scale of passive restoration of Posidonia, it's following the improvement of wastewater treatment plants over the French Mediterranean coast. And in the frame of a regional monitoring network, it has been evidenced a natural recovering between 1 to 3% in terms of surface of meadow per year, which is quite huge, considering the slow growth rate of the plant. So next slide, and another example in the Bay of Marseille. So that's where I'm working. The Bay of Marseille, Prado Bay, was historically impacted by wastewater input and coastal development until the 80s. And since then, there was a wastewater treatment plan improvement and the diversion of the treated waters outside of the bay. And meantime, there was also a better management of coastal development afterwards since the late 80s. And as a consequence, underwater, we observe this on the next slide. This is the Prado Bay. We can see in brown the dead mats, and in green the fragmented meadows impacted by heavy human activities during until the 80s. And the next slide we can see, yes, this is a sonar, a side scan sonar image showing a lot of patches which correspond to Posidonia patches, small patches. And if you look at this small spot here, and can click one time, please. And this corresponds to a 3-meter diameter patch of Posidonia meadows. It took maybe 20, 30 years to go from one small cutting naturally fixed on the dead mat to provide such a surface of meadow. And this was feasible because of the passive restoration of the Prado Bay. So next slide, please. We also identified old monitoring devices like permanent quadrats that were installed in 1986 and monitor only until 1999. You can click one time, so you can identify on this picture where the concrete marker that are limiting the permanent quadrat. And so on the next slide, please. And already in 1999, we observed quite impressive recovering of the meadow from 5% cover in 1986 to 32% in 1999. But in 2025, we did the same monitoring with some photogrammetry, and we estimated, you can click one time, please. We estimated at 80% the meadow cover. We are now almost 40 years after the implementation of this monitoring device. So that's quite a spectacular result. So next slide, please. So these examples show that, of course, Posidonia needs time to recover, but the passive restoration can be successful at intermediate and long-term scale, like we evidence here. But what is needed to evidence this is the long-term monitoring at a minimum of 10 years. And this is mandatory to clearly evidence and advice for better management behavior, because we need this result to show what is happening when we remove the stressor. So next slide. And what about the active restoration? When the natural recovering alone is not enough, despite these appropriate measures, in case of large areas of dead mat or in case of auto-erosion processes. So we can move to the next slide, please. In the Mediterranean, there is already 50-year-old feedback about active restoration of Posidonia with the sea gardeners, like pioneers in the 70s, which tested some quite discutable questioning methods using concrete frames and without a clear monitoring process. But meantime, there were numerous experiments, mostly from the team of Alexandre Menez from University of Nice, but as well from colleagues from Italy or Spain. And they have tested different depths, different methods, different types of material. And the conclusion in the 2000s were that transplanting Posidonia was feasible, but not cost effective for actual restoration at large scales, at significant scale. And most of the project lacked a scientific frame and long-term monitoring. And now on the next slide, I have some examples. Yes, some recent projects that are occurring in the Mediterranean. We have some quite large-scale projects of several thousand square meters, like the project Repique or Prime in the French Riviera, respectively 5,000 square meters and 2,000 square meters. That's a lot of field work to cover such large areas using detached fragments. So we talk about this after. There are other methods like this biomat technique used, for example, in Sardinia, in a project of this picture on the right is like 7,000 square meters of this biomat, this carpet of coconut with a metal grid, and the metal grid is used to fix the cuttings. So that's a lot of artificial material that maybe can be avoided. I don't know if it's the most suitable method. And in another project, the project Renforcé, like in 2020, they compare 4 different methods of transplanting Posidonia, and compare the more important was to compare this method to the natural dynamic of the meadow. And I can let you guess what was the most effective method from these 4. The natural one, just the natural dynamic was more effective than all these techniques that were tested. So that's something to to consider. So next slide, please. So another project in Tuscany, in Italy, following the sunk of the Costa Concordia back in 2012. There was an experimental transplanting of fragments to cover over 2,000 square meters of degraded meadow, so on dead mat. And following this, there is already several publications showing quite interesting results. Okay, so next slide. And this one it's another project that occurred in 2017. In Monaco, there was a 4-hectare land reclamation to build a new district in Monaco with fancy billionaire villas and buildings. And this was considered as of high economic interest. So this project was feasible in the context of Monaco. And this land reclamation covered like 1,500 square meters of meadows, and only 500 were removed and were transplanted elsewhere in 2017. And 8 years later, only 400 square meters are remaining. So this is typically not a success. It's not an appropriate way of restoring, because it's just a compensation of a very impacting project. That's an example maybe to show what not to do in coastal development processes, and restoration should not be the argument for compensate and to continue coastal development. So, next slide, please. We can talk quickly about the use of seeds or seedlings that can be collected after a mass beach cast event of fruits and seeds. So the benefit is that there is no impact on donor meadows. You don't have to collect cuttings. It's easy to collect and with potential high abundance. And it favors the sexual reproduction and genetic diversity. But the sexual reproduction of Posidonia oceanica is sparse, and we cannot guarantee to have a management plan using restoration with seed, because it's not yearly or not everywhere, and we cannot master the abundance and the availability of fruits and seeds. There is a risk of grazing by herbivorous that can limit the survival rate. So we have an average low survival rate for this kind of methods. And we can also use in vitro cultures of seedlings that needs human financial resources. And the seedlings are more sensitive to marine heat waves than adult shoots and cuttings. Okay, next one. I think I'm already late. See some pictures just to show some project. We can skip to the next one. So this, I wanted to show you two guidelines, two documents that for me are very important to consider if you want to work on the restoration of Posidonia meadows. So this is a critical review from Budweis and collaborator, and another work provided from the Met Posidonia network, like quite recently, involving 50 contributors, scientists, and managers. So we can go to the next slide. Yes, and this decision model is very important to consider when you want to start an active restoration procedure. You have to ask yourself the following question. And if it's a no, it's a no-go. It's not feasible. If it's a yes, maybe we can think about working on. So did Posidonia oceanica exist in this site in the past? Yes or no? If it's not the appropriate habitat, and if Posidonia has never been in a place, it's not suitable to restore Posidonia in this place. Another essential question is, as the supposed cause of regression cease to operate, if there are still anthropogenous pressure, it's not suitable because the meadow will keep decreasing, including the natural meadow and the transplanted meadows. And are we observing natural recolonization on the sites we want to transplant it? Are the neighboring meadows naturally recovering? This is a clue to identify if the dynamic can be positive. And at a more regional level, we have to consider if the action is significant compared to the area still colonized. If we are transplanting few dozen of square meters, when the need should be more thousand or hectares, it's not worth it. And we also have to consider that the benefit of the transplant must be greater than just the naturally colonized area. And we also have to consider the advantage of the investment in transplanting. It must be superior to the advantage of investment in just improving the quality of the environment. So we can go to the next slide. Yes, so this guideline also show that long-term monitoring are very few, that the fails are almost never published, and there is a relative actual success in the long term. And the more fun we observe like a stabilization of and a low shoot production, which should suggest that there are remaining stressors that can avoid the transplant to spread. But there is a case study in the Posidonia, so it's a transplant experiment in Porcro National Park, where they transplant cuttings from different origin in the Mediterranean, and they bring the cuttings and they transplant it in France, in the National Park of Porcro. And between 1998 and 2023, the surface of the cuttings evolved from 3 to 105 square meters. It's 35-fold more surface. That's quite an interesting result, but in the long term. So on the next slide, we can observe what it looks like. So it's between 2006 and 2023. So next slide. And one other example in the Bay of Marseille, still, where there was a small transplant experiment in 1991 and only a 4-year monitoring. just showing some positive evolution, increasing the number of shoots, but it stopped in 1995. And last year, we discovered some of the transplants. And the next slide, please. And can you click just one time, please? Okay. And the previous cuttings were installed in these lines, the red lines like this. And 34 years later, we observed this big patch of Posidonia with uncommon shape compared to what we can observe, like a rounded shape. And what we observed is that the slow increasing in terms of surface or number of shoots observed until 1995. When we did some measures in 2025, we observed, if you click one time, and another one. Yes, thank you. Now we have 12,000 shoots and a surface of about 22 square meters. So that's quite impressive results, but we need the long-term monitoring to evidence such benefit, not only of just the transplanting, but also of the previous removal of the stressor. This is feasible because there is no more stressors. Next slide, please. Okay, now just quickly some techniques. I'm not talking a lot about techniques, but I'm just specifying some the one that can work, in fact. So what the aim is to have at least a maximum survival rate of 75%. So after 5 years and a positive dynamic observed. And it must correspond to a recovering in the long term as well of ecological functions. Some prerequisites are needed. You need the material collected must be slightly deeper than the restoration site. If your site is at 15 meters, you can collect your cuttings at 15 and more, but not at 5 meters or 10 meters. It's better to favor plagiotropic rhizomes corresponding to horizontal growth and to favor a minimum of 3 to 5 shoots per cuttings and fragments. And the seasons, more appropriate season is from spring to end of summer. So next one, it can be used. So we can use living cuttings sample in a living meadows or to use detached fragments that are naturally detached or detached because of anchoring activities. We can question about the impact of the sampling on donor meadows, but some works has evidence that with a low shoot density, cuttings density of the sampling of 1 or 2 cuttings per square meter, it's negligible. And the use of detached fragments, question about the unknown origin of the fragments, and which can have consequences on the survival rate. And there is also an issue about the availability of fragments, and the collection can be time-consuming. So next slide, please. The easier way, and maybe the most effective, is to use iron staples from 15 to 30 centimeters long. There's 2 techniques. You can previously fix the staple to the cutting, but it's time consuming out of the water, or you can just fix the cutting with the staples in situ. So it's less manipulation, and it can be removed 3 years after when the cutting is developed enough. So I'm close to the end. Sorry for the next slide, please. And there are other alternative methods, like using other materials like rocks and pebbles to avoid. Or there is this example in Monaco using sods and using like a caterpillar sampling the meadows, but very heavy, very expensive. And the use of coconut square mat with or without metal grid. So it's questioning about the fact that it's artificialization, but also in terms of success. Okay, next, please. Yes, and in any case, the best is to avoid artificialization and the use of EV material. So the challenges for Posidonia are to move toward upscale operations. So the transplantation activities can be significant. But what about the cost benefit that need to be assessed and is very few often assessed about the human, the financial resources that are needed, the carbon footprint of such operation. And we need to assess the actual benefit of this active restoration compared to the passive restoration alone. So appropriate indicators are needed, like at the ecosystem level. And of course, long-term monitoring is mandatory. Next one, it's already finished, it's almost finished. And for example, if we remove the stressor and we consider a potential recovering of 1% per year of surface area, like it was published recently, in the Prado Bay with 600 hectares of living meadows, this could correspond to a 6 hectares per year at the scale of the bay. So I don't know a project which can secure the surviving and of the same surface area. So that is to consider as well, the benefit of the passive restoration alone. And just to conclude, the last slide. Yes. So passive restoration is mandatory before active restoration. Remove the stressor first, then we need to respect guidelines for best practices, particularly for ethics consideration. It is necessary to assess, to monitor the actual benefit of active restoration compared to passive restoration. Whatever the project, active restoration remains expensive and time-consuming. This needs to be considered. So upscaling is a challenge. I already told it. And the next one, maybe the most important point, the active restoration must not be the argument to continue degrading natural habitats. It's not because we maybe know how to cure and to fill the scar with some meadows that we can continue to degrade and to have anarchic coastal development. So active restoration must not be a solution for coastal development compensation. And that is really important for environmental projects. So I'm finished. I'm sorry for being too long, maybe. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for this insightful presentation. And yes, as you already gave a good summary, so I think we can go to the questions now that you raised, that it's important to remove these pressures and have long-term monitoring before any intervention and prioritize passive restoration. So let's have a few minutes then now for the questions. The floor is yours.
Maybe just one thing, there was a question about the guidelines that you developed thanks to the MPN, and it's available in English, to my knowledge, not in French for now.
Yes, it's in French as well.
Okay.
Both it was translated from English to French.
Okay, but we'll make it available then.
I think you can find both versions on the MPN website.
Yeah, it's not working just now, unfortunately, but we'll be on that.
I think there was another question from Seyfeid.
Would you like to take the floor and ask the question to Patrick? Yes, I'm going to speak French. Yes, I have a question on the technique of sampling. Are there any specific rhizomes that needs to be sampled before transplanting Posidonia? And also, how do we maintain Posidonia between the sampling and the reimplantation? Can you please repeat your question? Do you mean the sampling in order to collect or to transplant, or then no, to how to do the sampling for transplanting purposes? Actually, I didn't have time to talk about it in my presentation, but the idea is that there must be not too much time between collecting rhizomes and transplanting and their reinstallation. For example, sometimes we collect on a site which is very nearby, and the transplantation doesn't get out of the water. The more you take them out of the water and they stay out of the water, the more they risk to be damaged. And therefore, the idea is to limit manipulation as much as possible. For example, in the Bay of Marseille, we had a test. There are some sites where we collected rhizomes in a meadow that was just nearby, and during the same dive, we have been able to collect them on the transplantation site, and we have transplanted them immediately without keeping them out of the water for too long time. It is important to avoid manipulation as much as possible and not to take samplings to the lab, because you have to do things promptly and immediately as fast as possible. Very weak manipulation. Also, the cuttings must come very near the transplantation site. For example, there were some transplantations from Greece, Turkey, Algeria, and this is something that needs to be avoided for genetic pollution. In ethical terms, this is not very nice. Thank you. Okay, thank you. There's two more questions which are quite similar, with a recommendation in terms of active restoration. So specify something on active restoration. Well, it depends. What is really very important is that you have to go on a case-by-case basis, and you have to understand what's going on in the context. A very important thing is a method which is working quite well, but it's very expensive. And if the method is effective and it's very expensive, is it really worth using it? Sometimes you can do active restoration, but the easiest way, the easiest solution is the best one. For example, you can use staples, which can be easily used underwater. This technique is mostly successful, also because it's not very expensive, it's quite cheap. So one last question, Massimiliano Marino. You were talking about upscaling, the challenge of upscaling Posidonia restoration. What do you think is the main challenge? So when I see projects, for example, for 2,000 square meters, 1 hectare, they seem to be important, but still it's a drop in the ocean of what should be done and of what should be restored. And the challenge is this one. The challenge is on passive restoration at the beginning. You cannot restore with industrial methods different hectares of Posidonia meadows. So definitely you need to plan effective passive restoration, and in some cases, some bits and pieces of active restoration But the example of the Prado Bay, where there was a lot of passive restoration, is very interesting, because this should be replicated also in other sites where there is a lot of human impact.
Introduce the next speaker.
Yes, we'll continue because yes, we would like that everybody has time to speak. So let's continue with the next speaker. Please, next slide. We already went to that one. So I'm pleased to introduce Sylvain Bluet, Deputy Director from the Cap d'Agde Marine Protected Area. He will present a practical example on habitat restoration, focusing on the recovery of Cysticerra forest and Posidonia meadows. So Sylvain, thank you for joining us. The slides are there, so you can just speak through them. Thank you.
Okay. Hello everyone. Je fais la présentation en français ou en anglais, vous préférez?
Shall I do it in French or English? What do you prefer?
Yeah, whatever you prefer. It's fine. Yeah, I don't know if for the interpreters it's fine as well, no?
Ok.
Oh, you feel more comfortable. That's fine.
D'accord. Bon, je vais essayer de la faire en anglais, mais je ferai des
So I'll
questions en
try to
français.
do it in
I try
English,
to
and then
to
I will
speak in
answer the
English, but
question
after
in
for
French.
the
Okay?
question, I speak French. Okay. Today we are going to talk about a project of ecological restoration in marine protected area of the coast Agatoise in France. It's a new program of restoration of Cysticerra. There are brown algae that form a real forest under the water. Okay. They are very important for biodiversity, and this presentation we will explain why they are important and what happened that them and what we are doing to bring them back. Okay, next slide. The MPA of Coast Agatoise, it's a Natural 2000 site. It covers more than 6,000 hectares. It's managed by the municipality of Agde. On your coast, we have mass tourism, 20 small scale fishermen, high diver center, many recreational fishermen, and a lot of nautical activity. All these activities are positive for your town, but they also create pressure on the marine environment. That is why protection and restoration are necessary. Next slide. The coastal zone is strongly impacted by human activity, such as port, tourism, and coastal protection structure. Urbanization and construction have altered natural habitat and disrupt ecological balance. Water quality is declining, especially in shallow water area where population and sedimentation accumulate. This pressure have led to the destruction of ecosystem and the loss of key species like Cysticerra, essential for shallow algal community. Next slide. Cysticerra are what we call keystone species. They structure underwater ecosystem. They act like forest and on land. They give shelter to small invertebrates, and they are nursery for many species of fish. But in the 20th century, they decline a lot because of urbanization, pollution, overgrazing by sea urchin, running of the sea, and strong storm. In Agde, two species, Ericaria mediterranea and Cysticerra barbata, gradually disappeared. The last time we see they were in the 1982. Today, the local pressure are still water quality, tourism, and port activity. Next slide. Your main objective is to restore a key habitat of the shallow rocky seabed. We also want to contribute to the European strategy for biodiversity. Another goal is to help natural recolonization, but the dispersal of this species is very limited. Finally, we want to restore a lost ecological heritage of the Agatha coastline to give back to the sea what was destroyed in the past. Next. To start, we search in the old inventory to know where these algae used to grow. Then in the 2019, we did preliminary inventory and mapping, HD mapping, to evaluate the potential site for restoration. For Ericaria mediterranea, the next slide, sorry. For Mediterranea Ericaria, we work with a donor site near Locat. The first step was to look for fertile individual, where collect fertile shoot. Then we prepare the rocks in the recipient site. We scraped a small area of about 50 square centimeters to clean them. After then, we drill all and insert special ring with glue. Finally, we secure the shoot with plastic teeth so they could attach and grow. Next slide. For I'm sorry. Next. Okay. For Cystosera barbata, we use donor population in Tow Lagoon. For barbata, the method was different. We collect fertile individual together with the substrate, so with the rocks they were growing on. Then we transplanted them directly into the recipient site. This was more difficult, but it was important to test. Next. Result. The results were very different for the two species. For Ericaria mediterranea, the success was very high. 90% of the seed show recruitment, and in most places the algae start to expand. But 2025, the totality area gain is about 58 square meters. And for Cystosera barbata, unfortunately, was no recruitment success. The mortality was very high, and we don't know exactly why. Next slide. Perspective. For this result, we can say that the restoration of Ericaria mediterranea is possible and successful. We can now imagine an operational deployment along the entire Agatha coast in the MPA. For Cystosera barbata, we will continue new experimentation. We also plan to test another species like Ericaria crinita and try also on artificial structure. In the future, we will continue monitoring for 10 years to genetic analysis and follow the benthic community. Your big objective is to make the Agatha coast of a Mediterranean reference for the restoration of Cystosera. Next slide, the last slide. This project to restore Cystosera population, it's part of the large restoration plan for the marine protected area. We have a management plan that guide all your ecological restoration action. As you can see, we really work different projects from the harbor area to the open sea, restoring fishing habitat, protecting seagrass meadow, improving marine structure, and restore lost species. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We will continue with the next case study, so no need don't share the screen. If you can share again, and we will go to the discussion.
Patricia, like Sylvain was super effective. He like did the presentation super quick. So if
Okay, we have time. Yeah.
a question or two just now that you can't wait for, please
Okay. Yeah.
as it's quite fresh, and otherwise there will be more time for question. But yeah,
Okay.
Miss Sylvain, I had a question. You had no idea why it worked for one species and not for the other one? Like this is
Barbata?
yes, question mark. Yeah, no idea at all. Okay.
Actually, we don't know why it didn't work with barbata. Barbata is a species which prefers calm areas. So when we have reintroduced the species, it was at a time when there were a lot of sea waves and sea storms, and probably sea conditions prevented the success of our project. We are going to test once again next year. We're going to test to have a project on barbata. Probably we will follow the same protocol as the one followed for Ericaria mediterranea, just to take in with some fragments and not to take in all of the individuals. And so we will be using this method. The advantage for this method is to be very practical. It is easier because you don't have to transport rocks, for example, so it is easier in terms of transport. And also, when you move rocks, especially when you move rocks and algae that are located in a lagoon where there are a lot of invasive species, it takes a lot of time to clean up all the rocks before moving them. So only taking fertile branches is much easier. Okay, thank you. So no more questions right now. We will go with the next presentation, and then we'll go back to the question.
Then we will go now to the, you will have also chance to discuss, you have further questions later on to Sylvain. We will now go move to Sicily on one of the Rest Coast pilot sites with Massimiliano Marino from the University of Catania. He will share how restoration combines technical approaches with governance and stakeholder engagement, and what lessons are learned from other MPAs. So yes, Massimiliano, are you there? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Patricia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So I present myself. I'm Massimiliano Marino from the University of Catania in the very south of Italy. Today we'll talk to you about our experience into coastal restoration techniques here in a case study in the southern corner of Sicily. In comparison with the other two presentations, we have two main differences. First of all, we are going to move a bit more inland. Rest Coast is a project about to restore the continuity between the river habitats towards the coast. So we are going to talk about different type of techniques to try to restore the continuum between all these habitats. And the second one is about, we are not going to talk about only the technical challenges, but also the governance challenges. So about the complex situation of the stakeholders and the authorities and all the procedures to try to push forward an agenda that are more focused, that is more focused on coastal restoration. But first of all, I will present the site. The next slide, please. So the lagoons of the southeast of Sicily, this is our case study, is basically a complex of saline lagoons, which are archetypical for Mediterranean lagoons. These lagoons are most of the time of the year disconnected to the sea, and they receive water intake from, let's say, fresh water during flash floods and marine water during sea storms during the winter, and they become dry from the winter to the summer, become more and more dry, and so we have a big variability in terms of water level and salinity because they basically become completely dry during the summer. Next slide, please. This area is particularly important for the biodiversity. It is indeed one of the, let's say, obligated stops for the birds that travel along the central Mediterranean flyway. And so basically, let's say, the ecological status of this area influences very much the amount of birds that move from the Northern Europe to Africa and back. And this area is renowned into other type of networks like Natura 2000 and the Ramsar Convention. Next slide, please. So the problem is that this area is particularly subject to anthropic pressures. On the top left panel, you can see this is a view of one of these lagoons, and you can see on the horizon what I call a sea of greenhouses, a sea of plastic, basically, because this is an area particularly that in the last decades changed its vocation from family scale agriculture to intensive agriculture. And so these, of course, had a great impact in terms of presence of plastics. And in general, these lagoons were used as waste dumps for many, many, many years. And also in the last decades, this place became particularly also renowned for touristic and swimming tourism. So there is a growing urbanization that, of course, led to coastal squeeze and to the reduction of the place of the lagoon. So not only a degradation of the ecological value, but also a reduction of the actual space for these lagoons. Next slide, please. And also these pressures are going to be going to increase, basically, to increasing climatic threats. This is an area that has been particularly vulnerable to different types of extremes. We've experienced the Medicanes in the last 7 years, so tropical-like cyclones that hit the Mediterranean and particularly hit this area. And also the things for the future are getting worse. These are low-lying areas, so these are very flat and very close to the sea. So the sea level rise is going to change the morphological and ecological threats during and in the following decades. So of course, if we have a urbanization on one side, so an increase of vulnerability, and on the other side, a projected increase of hazard, so the risk, the hydraulic risk is increasing. Next, please. So this area is, it was until 2011 protected by 2 natural reserves, one on the north side, as you can see, that was established in 1984, and in the beginning of the 2010s, another one was established. But next slide, please. Basically what happens is that, the other slide, please. There was an animation. Exactly. Thank you. Basically what happens is that this second reserve was disbanded in 2015 because the farmers in the area opposed to the establishment of and started a big class action against the Sicilian region. So the other reserve was disbanded. Next, please. So what happens is that in around 2013, a German pro-biodiversity foundation actually purchased those areas and started to build a private reserve, basically. So they started to buy these single lagoons and the wetland areas, and with the money from donors and from other type of projects, they basically started the virtuous cycle, and now they are more and more buying those lands and restoring. So they started to purchasing, putting fencing, removing the waste. Also, this is an area which is particularly was subjected to illegal hunting. So the birds were basically shot by the local population. So they started to have also surveillance. And now this area is it became very different in 10 years. Next, please. So a couple of years later, we at the University of Catania started our approach to these areas, in particular with the project Rescost, with a slightly different, let's say, purpose. So the idea is to have an ecological restoration that is not only related to the conservation of nature, but also we acknowledge the, let's say, the role that the habitats and the coastal habitats have into reducing the vulnerability, and specifically about reducing the vulnerability to coastal erosion and to coastal flooding. So we started, in collaboration also with this German foundation, a collaboration in order to, let's say, evaluate a different range of restoration actions to evaluate their performance. Next. So, but what we saw there was a very scattered, let's say, panorama of different stakeholders. This is what I call actually a polarization of stakeholders. So on the right side of the plot, you can see, let's say, not authorities, but associations and foundations that have interest into the restoration activities. And on the other side, on the left, there were municipalities, water district authorities, and also the farmers. So people that have actual influence on the authoritative process. So on one side, we have the interest for the restoration. On the other side, we have the agencies that have the actual agency to do the restoration, but they don't have a specific interest, or in some cases, they have, let's say, an opposition to the restoration. Next, please. So we didn't know much about the area, so we started collecting data about both abiotic and biotic processes. So about the vegetation, water quality, bathymetry, and sediments, flora and fauna, etc. Because at the time, we realized that this is a very underexamined area. So we started a couple of years ago to build this database. And next, please. We also installed a monitoring network. And just to give you very recent news, one of these sensors that you are seeing now was yesterday being vandalized by someone there in the population. To see, basically, there is a sort of an opposition by the local population to this type of initiatives. And yeah, and this is, it actually happened yesterday. So just to give you, let's say, a glance of what is happening there. Next, please. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. No, the other one, please. Thank you. And so in 2023, we started to do the, let's say, the foundation started with a life project, a series of restoration action. Here there are some examples, which are some of these channels that you can see in the middle are channel for fish culture that have never been used. Basically, the lagoon was reshaped to host a fish culture channel that was never used. So they are trying to renaturalizing it in order to favor the nesting and breeding of birds and other type of species. And also you can see bird islands and channels to foster biological connectivity between the lagoons. But just to see from this picture, but one of the big problems in this particular area is the building of that village that you can see in between the sea and the lagoons, which was built on top of the dune. So what happens is that when there is rain, it gets flooded from the lagoon side, and when there is the sea storm, it gets flooded for the seaside. So there is a, let's say, a big threat in terms of vulnerability of this place. Next slide, please. This is just, let's say, some results of the monitoring of the birds. So after the area was the island were built, we basically observed an increase of birds pair. So basically, these islands that they built, they worked they worked pretty well. So basically what happens is that they dredge the channel in between the lagoons, and with that sand coming from these dredged channels, they build all the islands. Next slide, please. So with the aid of numerical modeling, we tried to also investigate other type of solutions, because these solutions that were implemented in 2023 are more related to the conservation of biodiversity, right? But so in order to, first of all, connecting a bit with what Patrick was saying before, we are in the phase of assessing the restoration rather than actually doing it. So we, at this point, started to investigate a series of actions all along from the seaside to the inland wetland side in order to, let's say, understand their potential into reducing the flooding and the erosion in not only in present scenario, but also in climate change scenarios. So with associated increase of storminess and increase of sea level rise. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of these type of models that we did. So we built a numerical model that allowed us to make a comparison between the flooding with the case of no restoration and with different restoration. This is for the case of flooding. And next, please. Also the case for the erosion. So in this case, it was particularly effective the let's say restoration of the dune belt, in particular for this case. Next, please. So the title actually there was a title in this slide that was a few challenges ahead. So one of the main challenges in this area, which is not only related to the protection of the village, is also about to make a trade-off about the management of the water resource and the vulnerability of the village. Because on one side, we need to maintain minimum vital levels for the birds to nest and to, of course, thrive into the area. But on the other side, we like to reduce the vulnerability of the anthropized area. So the management in this situation is particularly complex because there is a lack of data, first of all, and also there is no, let's say, the roles about the management of the water resources are not clear. One of the example about this, next slide, is what happened in the during the Medica in Helios, which is an event that happened in 2023, which is a compound event. So we had flash flood from the riverside in the northern part, and also marine flood on the other part. So what happened in that, since the levels were pretty high, what happened is that, next slide, please, the inhabitants started to dredge illegally, of course. They started to dredge the estuary and in order to make the lagoon, all the water lagoon to flow out. So what happened is that the next summer, the summer of 2023, they didn't have enough water levels for the birds into the lagoons. So what the Pro-Biodiversity Foundation did, next slide, please, was to build this, unfortunately there are no writings, but basically this it is a floodgate barrier, so that this floodgate barrier could retain the water, or at least retain minimal level of water to let the birds thrive. But of course, they got a legal opposition from the inhabitants that were accusing them that this barrier was basically increasing the flood vulnerability. Next slide, please. So what we did, again, for some reason there are no titles, but what you can see on the left is that is the case of the flooding for that historical event, and on the right, the historical event with the channel dredged. So basically what we did with the modeling, we supported the study of this event. And basically what we showed is that, first of all, the barrier makes no big of a difference, especially for events that are that have extreme return periods for like 50, 100 years or 3. 100 years. But also we demonstrate that actually the dredging of the channel is not that of a bad of an idea, but if the levels are managed properly, we can get, basically we can have the best of the two worlds. So we can have minimal water levels for the birds, but we can also keep with a preventive dredging of the channel. We can have low levels and low hydraulic risk in the village. Next, please. This one is just to show that we did that not only for the present scenario, but also for the climate change scenario with the presence of the sea level rise. Next, please. So another byproduct of this modeling activity is about the early warning system that we done. So basically, the model can be used as a forecasting system in order to forecast alerts to the population. However, next slide. This type of modeling is very computationally intensive, so it takes more time to do these simulations, which is of course incompatible with early alerting. So what we did, we used the results from the numerical models, and next slide, please, to train an artificial neural network with a machine learning based approach in order to have the faster elaboration of the flooding maps and to provide, as you can see on the right side of the panel, risk in a very short time, risk maps for localized alerting. So depending on the amount of flooding, you can get a different, let's say, risk alert from no risk to high risk. Next slide, please. So, and let's say the final product of our restoration is not only to have not just to evaluate the restoration intervention by itself, but is also to provide a planning instrument for the managers. And since the conditions are not stationary, which means that we have a climate change going on that is of which magnitude we are largely uncertain as long as we go towards the future, we provided what are called adaptation pathways, which are adaptive planning instruments that allow to, depending on the of a particular forcing, for example, sea level rise, they allow the managers to, depending on the sea level rise thresholds, to know where to move in terms of restoration. So in order for them to keep their objective, these type of pathways allow them to go towards a solution or towards another solution. Next slide, please. And of course, the Rescos project is actually very close to the end. So we were thinking about the legacy of the project and also talking about upscaling. Our effort was also not only to involve people in the area, but also to involve other managers and authorities that are all along the regions. In particular, the Sicily and Malta are all together connected along the same ecological corridor, because of course the birds that move from there move also from Malta and from Sicily. So our idea was to involve other sites to treat all these areas as a big ecological continuum, regardless of the fact that they are scattered by anthropic activities. And just recently, basically, we won, we granted a new project, Interreg Italia-Malta project, that is building on the legacy of Rescos. And next slide. All these activities were done, let's say, along a path in which the stakeholders and the authorities were progressively involved. So we try to reach them and to try to understand what were the needs, what were the limiting factors of the implementation and upscale of restoration. And we are in the process of building an agreement that tries to let's say, to establish a long-term commitment towards this type of solution. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Massimiliano. So we have now time to reflect a bit so on these two case studies. And if you have any questions for Massimiliano, more than welcome now to share. And afterwards, we will go through your presentations. We have 4 presentations, but maybe we don't have time to do all of them. So, but no worries, if not the next day, we will continue. So,
And Massimiliano, you mentioned that you've got funding for a follow-up project and to scale up with like neighboring country. Is that right? And is it like going to do more or less the same that we're doing at West Coast, but in cooperation and kind of in synergies with the other, or to transfer some knowledge and support them, or to finalize what you have been doing for West Coast and that is still ongoing? What is the focus?
Yeah, I think it's both of things, in the sense that what we'd like to do is to also to transfer, and also this the other sites that I showed, also they started their own restoration project in other projects. So what we are trying to do on one side is to, as you were saying, transfer the technology and the best practices in between us. Because some focused more on the Posidonia restoration, some focused more on the inland wetlands. So the idea is also to share and to build a unified monitoring network. On one side is, of course, to share knowledge, and on the other side is the fact that this, as I was saying, this is an ecological continuum. So one of the foundation of the West Coast project is that the single restoration actions is going generally to fail if there is no continuity in space and time. So what we are trying to do is to keep the process forward, to keep the attention high, to keep the let's say restore more and more and connect different habitats all together, and to see if actually the benefits are actually larger than just with single restoration actions.
And sorry, I'm Massimiliano, and you're collaborating with 2 other countries with this, with this new funding from Interreg, right?
Yes, we are collaborating with the University of Malta. So what we saw is that they have our same problem, especially about the urbanization and coastal and wetland squeeze. So there was, I think both countries were quite subject to a very say savage urbanization during the 70s and the 80s. So this area will become very, very, very small. So it is important that these areas, even if they don't let's say expand, they keep to be functional. So we have let's say knowledge to share, but also we share the same challenges and the same habitats. So yes, this is I think this posed the basis as for what the West Coast vision was. So the actual upscale on the regional level of the knowledge that was gathered from single actions.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you. This is going to be very interesting also for the last session, on the virtual session where we talk about funding. So it's a good example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we hear from the participant now, from all you that you've been like listening intensely through the first hour? So yeah, I think it's time to give the floor, and yeah, I let you, Patricia, introduce our speaker.
Okay, so now, yeah, we have a bit of time for your presentations. We want to listen to your participants' presentations on restoration actions that you have taken on Mediterranean MPAs. So as you know, each group will have also one presenter, 5 minutes. Then we will first have, I put it's in this order, so I hope we have time for all the presentations, but yes, if not, as I say, we can continue the next day. So we have first Pudrila I don't know if I pronounced it right, Hasco Selaj from the Karaburum Sasan Marine Park and Porto Palermo Natural Park in Albania. We have Saifeddin Triki from EcoWard and Notre Grand Bleu Association from Curiat Islands in Tunisia. And then we have David Martinez Pablo, Parque Natural de Salbufera de Desgrau, Menorca. And finally, we have a presentation more from Ons Bensarti from the Northern Islands from Kerkena. So yes, so we can start then for the first presentations. I put them in this order, okay? So you can start talking with your presentations are there already.
Hello everyone, I am Pudrila. I represent Flag Pine NGO. I have prepared for this topic the restoration action implemented in the Carabrunza Marine Park and the Porto Palermo Nature Area. At first, I will introduce my NGO. I represent Flag Pine. It is a local NGO established on 8 March 2013. And this NGO acts as the co-management in collaboration with the Regional Agency of Protecting Areas, VLOR, for the management of the Carabrunza Marine Park and the Porto Palermo Natural Park. The objectives of our NGOs are strengthen the protection and sustainable development of protected area in Vlora Bay, increasing and the collaboration between local community and local government in the decision making and the conservation of the environment, the protected areas, and raising awareness about the values of nature, historical and cultural treasures for protecting areas. You can go to the next slide, please. Yes. The problem addressed in marine habitat restoration, I have identified the habitat degradation, the climate change impact, invasive species, pollution, loss of biodiversity, erosion and sedimenting. And for the most pressures, I have identified economic pressures, development pressures, and acknowledging gaps that we have. Examples of ecosystem is the next slide, please. Yes, examples of ecosystem restoration initiatives that we have taken are installation of morning buoys to prevent mechanical damage to Posidonia oceanica seagrass meadows caused by vessel anchoring. This is a measure that we have taken because these meadows are near to the protecting area and is also a visited point by the tourists. So it was needed to do that. Accepted outcome that we have from this initiative that we have taken are protection and preservation of existing seagrass habitats, reducing in-habitat fragmentation, and long-term enhance of biodiversity and ecosystem service provided by Posidonia oceanica. Another example of ecosystem restoration initiatives is transplantation of Christocera species as a measure to support the restoration of native macroalga forest. This is the initiative of the University of Vlora, and our expect outcome are re-establishment of Christocera habitats, which are key ecosystem engineers in coastal zone. Please, the other slide. Another examples are the deployment of three-dimensional artificial reef structures in the Porto Palermo area to provide refuge and breeding grounds of benthic species. Increasing this three-dimensional structural complexity of the seafloor, enhance colonization by marine organisms, improve benthic biodiversity, and support for the recovery of degraded benthic communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudmila. I just have a quick question for you. Yeah, thanks for joining us today. We missed you last week. So it's great that you are present in MPA today. Are those activities ongoing, planned, or that happen already? You know, when you mentioned like about this Zera,
we are monitoring the Christocera habitats every time, and we are preparing a report for this data. And for the three-dimensional structures, there are in Porto Palermo, and in the future we are going to go with divers there to see the impact that they have. So if they are with the organism, with algae and every species, this is feedback, a positive feedback for us.
Cool. And the Comorin, have you already like implemented them, or is it?
Yes, these are the real examples that are done.
Right. Magic. How many Comorin have you been installing?
Yes, as I told at first, we are in co-management in the collaboration with the Regional Agency of Protecting Area. So this is a job of two of us. And the example that I have said about the Christocera, it is initiative of the University of Flora. But we are yes.
Well, thank you for clarifying. I wasn't sure if it was planned or if it was already ongoing or done. So thank you.
No, they are already done.
Perfect.
And sorry, I think I didn't understand it good. So you said they are divers there. They are going to do the monitoring.
Yes, in the future to see the impact that they had.
Okay, technical divers, not a dive center with citizen science tourism. So they are hired for that, no, for doing the monitoring.
No, they are measures that we have done.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go for the next. If you don't have any more questions, we can go to the next presentation.
Hello, everybody. I am a member of the Comble Association. We have Coret Islands. We have two islands. It's not a large group. We have the small and the big one. And so Not Comble is the association managing these two islands together with the local Environmental Protection Agency. We have a marine surface of 65,000 hectares and a terrestrial surface of 340 hectares. And the small island has 25,000 visitors every summer. We have Posidonia meadows, as you can see, and they're all around. We have marl bottoms, and we have rocky habitats, so great sequestration capacity, great biodiversity, and also key place for protection against coastal erosion. So we have a regression of Posidonia meadows and a decrease in the density due to anchoring of tourist boats and also degradation due to marine litter from former aquaculture installations, and also pollution is a threat. Next slide, please. So the first restoration action was about the installation of ecological mooring for the tourist operators. We replaced traditional anchoring devices with sustainable and fixed mooring devices, 2 concrete blocks, 4 tons each. And as you can see in image A, so you see the concrete block that replaces the previous traditional anchoring solutions. We have a cable that is connected in order to allow the mooring. And we have now 0 risk on the Posidonia meadows around the Kuriat Islands. And so this ecological mooring system has been 100% used since 2016. The second restoration action that we carried out is the following. It's a palm-based artificial reef, and that is been made to restore degraded meadows. So again, there was a previous aquaculture facility. So these artificial reefs were made through these palm props based on the biodegradable cables, and they are used by several marine species, and many campaigns have been carried out thanks with the support of local stakeholders, including fishermen. And we have now many species of fish that have come back, and we have installed also these artificial reefs in other shapes, pyramid and other shapes, and we're able to restore biodiversity, especially some species have come back and are very abundant now, especially some seashells. And we were able to work hand in hand with stakeholders. We adapted and applied targeted measures. We also involved young volunteers that supported us and helped us. We have regular scientific monitoring, and every year we replace the palm fixtures in the artificial reefs, and we want to keep the effectiveness of these restoration actions. Still, we have anchoring, climate change and pollution. We need to reinforce the cooperation with regional players, especially local administrations. We need also to improve the ecological status of the Posidonia meadows. We have reinforced the resilience of marine habitats and coastal protection. We need to work more on awareness raising to reach the specific sustainable development goals of the MPA, and we want to extend the ecological mooring solution. And in particular, we're going to work more with the fishermen in order to provide them with ecological mooring solutions in order to be used around Kuriat Islands. And also we want to extend the restoration actions around degraded areas, involving also new players, especially fishermen. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great. I have no questions. If you have questions, please do not hesitate. Otherwise, we can move on to the next one, the third one out of 4.
Yes, thank you. So let's go with the example from Albufera's Grau Natural Park Menorca. So
Bonjour.
yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Martinez. I'm the manager director of the Albufera del Grau Natural Park. It's in Menorca, in the east of the Balearic Island. We have 1/3 part of the park that is marine, and the other are terrestrial. And I'm talking about the marine part. We have as main habitats in the marine protected area the Posidonia oceanica and the phanerogams, and also the pressures. I think is the more similar the other MPAs that are anchoring of boats on Posidonia, climate change, of course, submarine fishing. We have permitted the submarine fishing in the park, but it's regulated, and also there is dogs on the beaches and fire camps. You can see some images of some furtive fishing inside the park, some fire camps in the beaches, boats on the coast, and boats that anchor on the Posidonia. Next slide, please. We haven't done any active restoration, but we have, as the previous MPA, mooring buoys to the boats that they can anchor on where there are seagrass meadows, and they anchor on the mooring buoys. But there is an example of restoration of Cystoseira. I've seen that in other MPAs it's common project to restore in some places where have been Cystoseira. Is put on that image. You can see an example of that project. This project is not made by the Balearic government. It's by an association called Menorca Institute of Studies in Menorca, among other NGOs like Marilles Foundation for the Preservation of Menorca, and other entities like GovMenorca, CEAP, CSIC, or other NGOs. And the aim of this project is to recover these habitats. Next slide. There are some images of our natural park to visit the beaches. We regulate the paths to get to the beaches, and we protect the dunes, the coastal dunes. And on the sea, we have a buoys that limits the places where the boats cannot anchor. And I think the main challenges are to do a better monitoring of the marine habitats, and it's difficult because you need boats and specialists for do that job. And the main goal would be restore the degraded marine habitats in general, but it's first you have to do the monitoring and then restore that habitats. And next step that we have challenges in our natural park is improve this monitoring and improving the capacity that we have to do that job. That's everything. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, David. So we would like to give some minutes for debate a bit and ask questions and reflect today's sessions. So the last case study, we will leave it for the next week probably. So to wrap up today's sessions, let's highlight a few points that we were talking about different types of restoration, active, passive, hybrid. We were talking about always habitat specific. Then we had seen examples from Posidonia restoration techniques, from Cystoceira, and coralligenous and artificial reefs. So we have seen quite a bit. And then the case studies also show us that the success depends on, yes, governance, coordination, and technical methods. And also we were talking about scaling up restoration with one of the case studies and collaborating with other countries that they have similar issues. So I would like now to give the floor to you to reflect a bit. How was the session for you? If you have any questions also, or what challenge do you face also in your particular place? What kind of partnerships tools you think could work easy or more effectively in your site? So let's raise your hand or yes, we'll be right in the chat. Thank you, everyone.
Also, thank you for preparing a presentation, and we'll make sure you have the floor next time. We just thought it was going to be, not nice for you to rush through your slide and then say goodbye. So we thought we'll just, give you the time next time to do the presentation and have a bit of time to reflect. So yeah, thank you for your understanding.
It's totally fine, and I really would like to thank everyone for their presentation. I really enjoyed each of the presentation and the case studies because it was really a visual on how to to elaborate and also in our work. So I would like to say thank you to each one of us. But also I have just one question. Maybe it's not really related to the case of Massimiliano, but I really want to ask if the method of the early warning system can work also for the flooding modeling for sea rising because of the climate change.
Yes, basically the early warning system is let's say based on very standards artificial neural network. So basically the inputs could be whatever, depending on the forcing of your system. In our case, actually in our case, we also included the sea level. So in our case, other than being an early warning system, is also a climate warning systems, in the sense that the artificial neural network is fitted not only with the wave conditions, but also with the sea level rise conditions. But this is quite of a flexible, let's say, framework. Depending on your system and what is the forcing that you want to study, you can add whatever input you want. That is the thing.
Thank you.
Thanks to you for the question.
In the meantime, while you might be thinking of a few questions to ask, can you put your camera on so we can take a group picture for those of you that have a camera that works? That would be amazing. Thanks again for staying with us for 2 hours, for sharing your experience, for asking questions, for answering, questioning what you are doing. So yeah, it's great. We'll take a picture on 3. 1, 2, 3. Cheers.
Do you have any questions, or maybe you are tired after all these presentations? Do you have any talk about any constraints, any remarks?
Yes, please.
It's for Patrick. Is there is like any more ecological method instead of using, I don't know, if we put them and then we take them off, how do we call them? I forgot the name. And
the staples, les agrafes.
exactly. Oui, oui, les agrafes.
I think it's if we can remove the staples 3 years after the transplanting, it's okay, and it can be reused maybe for other projects. But I saw other alternative. I don't know the feedbacks about it, but like bamboo sticks.
We tried the palm leaf, like the palm branches of the palm trees. It's not 100% success, but it worked. I wanted to see if there is also other methods.
What I've tried is from advices from other colleagues that are successful experiments. So we use the staples, but you can have some alternatives. And I know that it's Laura Arroyo from the Balearic Islands. She showed me this bamboo sticks that is very cheap, and it's eco-friendly, maybe more than iron in the environment. But iron staple is not the worst to put and then to remove. So that could be a quite interesting compromise. It's very cheap as well. It's better than other heavy methods.
Yeah, it's better than plastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, can we read down the photo because I was driving?
We can redo a photo, Pudria. We can.
Thank you.
Again on 3 for those of you who have a camera. I understand, Amel, you are in your pyjama, so we won't ask you to turn on the camera as you are on a holiday. So thanks for joining. So 1, 2, 3, cheers. Et encore une. Il y a Susanna qui vient d'arriver. Ah. Sylvain est là, super, on en refait une. Moès, parfait.
Okay, wonderful, perfect.
1, 2,
We did
3.
it.
Merci beaucoup, Elora.
Thank you very much.
Je crois qu'on arrive à la fin
Thank you very
de
much,
cette
and I think
session.
we're now at the
Encore
end
2
of this
autres en ligne avant
session.
la session présentielle, et encore un grand
There's
merci
still the 2
à
more
tous les
online
intervenants
workshops
qui avaient
before meeting
partagé votre
face to
expertise, vos
face,
retours
and thank you very
d'expérience dans
much
cette
to
session.
our
C'est
speakers
vraiment
for sharing
vraiment
their
chouette
expertise and their knowledge.
pu faire ça.
That
Donc, merci à
was
vous, merci à tous les
really
participants
a good workshop. Thank you, and thank you
aussi
to all the participants
d'être là aujourd'hui, et
for being
je
here
vous
with
dis à
us
la prochaine, et
today.
je passe Patricia, si tu veux.
And I give the floor to Patricia if she wants to say something.
Thank you everyone for being here today. It's been actively interacting and sharing also your case studies. So I see you next week then.